All right, so today we're going to cover a few things on Excel tables. Excel tables are essentially different from, at least formatted Excel tables are different from what you're normally used to, which most people work in, which is range of cells. So today we'll be covering, the difference between range of cells versus formatted tables, and then we'll create some calculated columns. And we introduce the idea of structured referencing, and then we'll perform some aggregations and some calculations. Then we'll do like a quick pivot table. So to begin, actually, let me open a new one, right? And I'm going to get data from, let me say, so if you can see this, this is what I'm going to begin with. And, a lot of you might think, straight away that this is a table, that this looks like a table. Actually, I'll make this a bit bigger. I mean, it's got rows, it's got columns, right? And it's got column headers, right? Date, description, category, and the amount, right? And then, imagine you wanted to do a calculation like, just multiply the amount by 2, something very simple, amount times 2. All right, so you wanted to inflate the amount, you would do something like this, and then you say times 2. And that will double the amount, and then you can autofill, right, with this plus icon at the bottom right corner of the cell, all the way down. And that looks, that looks great. That looks straightforward. So this looks like a table, but unfortunately, this isn't like an Excel formatted table. This at the moment is what we call a range of cells. It's essentially a range. And you can tell because whenever you need to reference any item within this, this range, you'd have to use Excel's notation of cell referencing, for instance. So in this case, we had to manually write equals to D2 multiplied by 2. Now, the way a table differs in that regard is that so actually, let me just do everything at once. Awesome. The way a table differs is that it gives it a sort of structure, right? And to create an Excel table, right, you need to highlight the entire range of cells. You can either go to insert, right, and then you click on table, or you press Control T, or you press Control L. Any of these combinations would give you a table, and it's asking you here if your table has headers. In this case, my table has headers, so I'll click OK. Now I've created a structured set of cells, right? I've created a structured table. And the moment you create a table, then you get this extra icon here, this extra option here that that allows you to modify the table, right? So here you have table design. And the second thing that you should be aware of is you can now reference the table, right, by its name, right? And you can change the name of the table. In this case, it's table 1. I can change it to, I can just change it to expenses, right? I can change it to expenses. So now this table is essentially expenses, and anywhere in my cell, I would you know, I would reference it as expenses. So a few differences between that and this one. So now to create this amount by 2, right? All you have to do is to come in here, right? And the moment you type maybe amount times 2 here as the name of the column, right? It automatically adds a new column, right? And then you can type your equal to begin your formula, refer to the amount, and as you can see, it's no longer referring to the cell. Previously, this was cell D2, right? It's no longer referring to the cell. It's now referring to the column, that is a row in that particular column. And you can multiply that by 2 and press enter. And you only have to do that calculation once because it's a structured table and it knows that, you know, it's assuming that you want to calculate everything for the entire table. And it makes your work easier. So that's a brief, a straight introduction into Excel tables, and you can see the difference between a range and a cell. And then one more difference, a range rather, and an Excel table. One more difference is, imagine you you had some sort of calculation here, for instance, and you know, it was in a different sheet, perhaps, right? You wanted to calculate the total sum of your expenses, for instance. It's in sheet, let's say it's in sheet 3, right? So we can say from range, and we can say from table. So here, I want to calculate the sum of my total expenses, right? I would say equals to sum, right? For instance, and then I'll go to my sheet and then I'll highlight these cells, right? And I'll press enter. And that's the total sum, right? $7,124. And then if I want to do the same thing here, I want to do the same thing for this table, right? I can come here and say equals to sum, and then I highlight this. You can see what it does. It calls the name of the table, and then I'll explain this notation shortly. It calls the name of the table, and it calls the square bracket, which allows you to access the particular column in that table. In this case, the column is amount by 2, right? So, and then I press enter. Now we have the exact same thing. But guess what? Imagine I added a different data, right? I added an additional data to this. Say today's 18th of June, right? 2019. And this one is maybe an insurance expense. It's probably like car insurance, and it's insurance, and this cost me $1,270, right? Now, if I go to my from range, right, the calculation remains the same, right? It hasn't changed. Okay, so I have a question here. Does name ranging have the same effect as a table with respect to cell referencing? Does name range have the same effect as a table with respect to cell ref? So I will get to that. It has a different effect. The way it works is very different. And I think this example would even show you that. So our calculation for the sum of amount by 2, right, that column is fixed, right? It's telling you take everything from sheet 1 and then take, you know, the cells between E2 and E7 and sum them up. It's fixed. right? And that gave us 7124, which is this. But then we added an additional data and it didn't pick it. But let's do the exact same thing for this table here, right? 18 June car insurance, $1,270, right? So we have 18 June 2019, and you see that it automatically creates a new row to accommodate the new entry. And you can continue with car insurance. Description: insurance is 1,270, and the amount by 2 is automatically adjusted. Then let's check our new sum. Look at that, it has automatically adjusted, right? So very quickly, that has shown you, the difference between a a range and an Excel table. So yes, cell referencing is definitely affected. And this, how would I say, this tutorial or webinar is to gear you towards using more tables, more structured tables in your analysis. All right.